The eternal question, can I shoot down that Chinese spy balloon? Or maybe it's a UFO. Either way, will what you have in your gun safe right now work? Can it get there? How much do you have to lead it by? Will it actually be effective on target? If you're like me, you've been recently asking yourself these questions. If you're like me, you also have access to somebody who's a graduate from MIT with a degree in astronautical engineering. If you're not like me, then maybe this video is for you, because we're going to be going into these questions when we're talking about 22 LR, we're talking about 9mm, 45 ACP among your handgun rounds, 223, we're talking 6.5 Creedmoor, 30-06, 308, 408 Cheyenne, 50 BMG, 338 Lapua, and we get into tank ammo as well. What will work, if anything? What does some of that math look like? How much do you have to lead it by? What comes close and what doesn't even come close to coming close? I had the opportunity of sitting down with Mr. Dan Hurda, a graduate of the Massachusetts Institute for Technology with that important degree in astronautical engineering. This is how the conversation went. Well, Dan, thanks for coming in today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, so I guess let's start here. I mean, folks saw the intro, but how are you qualified to give an opinion about these things?
Well, I have a degree in astronautical engineering, so I've, over my career, done an awful lot of aerodynamic calculations and design for aerodynamics and drag, evaluated a lot of different things, as well as I'm an avid shooter. I think I've been shooting since I was 5-6 years old. I've got a bunch of credentials for that. I coach a youth shooting team, spend all of my free time at the reloading press, do a lot of ballistic calculations, trying to find that perfect load. So pretty much the majority of my time goes into something that's related to this topic.
So when I said, I think I reached out to you on LinkedIn about this, and I said, Dan, I'm interested in learning more about shooting down Chinese spy balloons, UFOs, and so forth. And just out of curiosity, what was your reaction when you saw that message?
Well, I kind of chuckled because it was a conversation that I'd had with several other people within the last week. You know, a little tongue in cheek, but that seemed to be the topic on an awful lot of shooting enthusiast minds.
Perfect. So let's give the people what they want. So why don't you explain some of the parameters, right? Because obviously any mathematics equation, there's lots of variables. We have to control for some unknowns, and just like anything else, I know you're going to get nitpicked in the comment section, and it just is what it is. Right?
Absolutely. And I'll admit, I made a few speculations and assumptions in this. So, and then we'll go into those, because this, when you first mentioned it, it seemed pretty straightforward. I thought, oh, okay, no problem. Throw a couple equations down. And when I got into it, it actually ended up being a lot more complicated than I thought, which made it really very interesting.
And something else that was interesting to me was that, because we discussed kind of doing like a spectrum of ammunition, handguns, rifles, maybe something even beyond rifles too. We're going to get into tank ammunition. And there were certain calibers that you just kind of threw out as like, this isn't even close. And it wasn't what I would have thought.
Yeah, this very much ended up different than I expected. Again, thought very straightforward. We're talking about shooting straight up, because if we want the best altitude, you want to shoot straight up. You could certainly get more distance arcing it, but if you want best altitude, that's going to be a shot straight up. So very simple. Bullets going up at a certain velocity. You've got gravity pulling it down, and you've got drag slowing it down. And again, I thought real simple. Look at those two forces, see how high the bullet can get before it runs out of steam.
And what made it not so simple, as you found out?
So the formula for drag, not terribly complicated, but it's 1/2 times the coefficient of drag. And the coefficient of drag is a property of the object based on the shape of it, the surface, how smooth it is. So that's a constant based on the object. So 1/2 times the coefficient of drag times the cross-sectional area of the object times the density of air times velocity squared.
Obviously.
Yeah. And yeah, again, I work in the motorcycle industry, and we do a lot of aerodynamic work, but we do it over a very narrow set of values. You know, even a fast motorcycle at 200 miles an hour, 0 to 200 is just a fraction of the velocity range that you see with ammunition. And it's pretty much all done at sea level or pretty close to that. So, you know, Sat down, wrote the equations out, and one of the first things I realized is, boy, between 0 and 20,000 feet of altitude, air density changes an awful lot. So I thought, okay, that's easy enough to look up, and it's a linear change, so that would be easy to even take an average for. But then you get into velocity, and well, that's changing from muzzle velocity all the way to 0 when it starts to fall, and that's a second order term. So that makes it a little bit harder to we're starting to get into calculus at that point. And then, like any research project, I read some of the prior art on it. Who else has done this before? What information is out there? See if I'm missing anything. And of course, I was. There's and I figured, okay, there's wind, and there'd be a lot of things that I could just ignore for purposes of a good general calculation. So I started looking for the coefficient of drag for bullets, if there was data on that out there. You see a lot of ballistic coefficients, and that's similar to coefficient of drag, but it's really not the same. So I started looking.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I thought there would be a more direct relation between them, and there really isn't. So started looking at for coefficient of drag, and again, lots of data out there. And something I hadn't realized this myself is it's expressed as a constant, but it's not actually constant. It's constant over a very narrow range of velocity. Again, when we talk about vehicles 0 to 200, it's a constant. But when you start going supersonic, all of a sudden the speeds that the air is going over it, things like Reynolds numbers start to play in, and the coefficient of drag of the bullet actually varies significantly over the velocity range. So now we've got an awful lot of things changing, and there's general information about how it changes, but not a whole lot of specific information. So that led me to say, boy, this became a more complicated calculation, and had a lot more variables in it than I thought.
I'm so glad I majored in humanities listening to all this. This is really interesting to me, but interesting in I'll be on this side of the table, not the guy with the laptop side of the table. So I guess let's start with 22. So you're sitting in your backyard, you're seeing that Chinese spy balloon go over at 20,000 feet. And yes, we know that there's all sorts of different altitudes and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to talk about 20. We'll wrap up at some other altitudes. Like I think one of the last ones came through at 60,000. And we'll get to the fact that it moves as well. But let's just imagine, it's stationary, it's up there. You're going to go like, I'm going to save America today. With my 1022 or whatever.
I say that all the time.
What? Only when I see a raccoon going through my garbage. What happens with the 22?
So you point that straight up in the air, which I think we should probably both say we don't actually recommend anybody do. So you point that straight up in the air, you figure out your lead, you pull the trigger, and that bullet goes to about 3,900 feet, and then it turns around and it starts coming down.
3,900 feet, so a little shy of the 20,000.
Yep.
And there's no draft or anything like that that's going to carry it. This side of a tornado going all the way up through the sky, I mean, there's just no way that your 22 is going to do anything.
No, it's pretty much an aerodynamic brick compared to some of the other rounds. It's the coefficient of drag's kind of horrible on it. It's got very little mass. So that's one of the big things is it has very little mass, so when you put that force of drag on it, it gets acted upon quite a bit, and it decelerates pretty quickly.
Well, I know it has more mass, and it comes in my Glock Perfection that I like to carry, 9mm.
9mm.
Right? So what about 9mm? If I just decide, hey, you know what, I'm concealed carrying, this is a threat. Again, do not do this. Like, let's be emphatically clear. But 9mm, do I stand a chance?
Well, you get a little bit further than the 22.
Interesting.
But only a little.
Okay.
So that one, and again, I made a few assumptions in this, but that one's going to make it to about 4,100 feet.
4,100. So we got 3,900 and 4,100.
Yeah, and I did the typical 115 grain, generic
Yeah.
bulk ammo.
Not plus P, blah,
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah. So just so I'm making sure I'm following properly, if you have an off-the-cuff guesstimate, if you had gone higher in grains to 147, do you think that would have made it further or not as far?
So you're going to start with a lower velocity typically. So it's going to be more stable longer, but in the end, it's not going to go as far. Because velocity is a second order term, you square the velocity. The velocity that you start off with is a really big factor on it.
Interesting. Okay. What happened to 45 ACP?
You know, it was such a puff that I didn't bother including it. It didn't even make it as far as 22. It ended up falling in the I think it ended up being 3,200, 3,300. It was yeah, it was it.
You offended a lot of FUDs right now. Guys, if you want to see some of those other calculations about 45 ACP or your pet caliber, let us know in the comment section. But yeah, so 45 ACP, you're better off with a 22.
Yep.
At least versus Chinese spy balloons.
Yep.
Okay. So let's depart and move into the realm of rifle. Where did you start?
So, of course, everybody wants to know what their AR is going to do to it. So I took a look at 223, and that's starting to get closer. Again, there's a wide range. I mean, you can go all the way down to 40 grain up to 90, 92. So I just did the generic 55 grain full metal jacket, boat tail, which, the most common round. And I will note that looking at a bunch of the data on bullets and coefficient of drag, the boat tail rounds make a big difference. That really improves the coefficient of drag. So that's if you're looking to shoot down spy balloons, definitely load up your boat tail rounds. And that one made it out to 6,800.
Okay, so now we're getting somewhere. We're still not even halfway there.
Yep.
We're approximately a third of the way there. And please check my lawyer math if I screw anything up here, because Lord knows the comment sections will. But we're almost a third of the way there with 223. All right, so don't try using your AR as as Mjolnir, the hammer of Thor against that Chinese spy balloon or UFO.
That's right. Now, if you bump that from an AR-15 to an AR-10, you get a little closer yet, but not a whole lot.
Okay.
Took a look at the 308 round, and that'll get you to 7,900.
Okay, so that's not too much of a difference.
No.
That's approximately 15% or 20%, something like that.
Yeah, and this was very interesting. When we talked originally, I had assumed gravity was going to be the big player in terms of slowing it down, and it turns out drag is. So what that starting velocity is, the mass of the bullet, really plays a bigger factor than gravity. If you take drag out of it, oh boy, they'll all reach it. So drag really ends up being the bigger player, and it's kind of made me think about ammo a little bit different, and I spent a lot of time thinking about it. So when you look at shooting out to 20,000 feet or something, huge like this, the typical shooting we do is just such a small snapshot of the bullet trajectory and the flight of it that we really don't think about, again, the whole terminal range of a bullet. We think about a very small portion of it.
And what you mean by that, if I'm following you properly, is when you say a snapshot, you mean because the bullet hits the target and it stops.
Right.
It doesn't just keep going until its velocity hits zero.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Guys, really quick, if you want to show your support for this video, including Dan, and if you want to see him come back, let us know. Click like, click subscribe, share this video around. It helps us in the algorithm. And be sure to comment below what you found most interesting as well. Now back to the show. What else do you have in rifle?
So, everybody, the big popular round these days, you can't go to the range without somebody showing it to you and telling you how good it is. So I looked at the 6.5 Creedmoor.
Got it.
And I know I got a lot of friends that would have been disappointed if I didn't. And that's creeping up a little bit further. And it got to 8,900.
Oh, okay. So we got 6,800 for the 223, 7,900 for the 308. And 8,900 for the 6.5 Creedmoor.
Correct.
Got it. All right. Well, that's a So 6.5 is a pretty sizable jump over 55 grain 223. And out of curiosity, what grain did you do the 308 at?
150.
150? Okay. And was that boat tail?
Yes.
Okay, so all of these are boat tail?
Yeah, all the rifle rounds are.
Got it. Okay. All right, so 6.5, though, not the solution we're looking for.
Nope. That may be the solution to other things, but not a Chinese spy balloon.
Dear yes, Chinese spy balloon and UFOs, no.
Exactly.
So where do we go from here?
So the next one, and I picked this because there was honestly a lot of data on it already. So looked at the tried and true 30-06.
America.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure everybody will jump on right away. Hey, Mythbusters did that. And yes, they did. And I used that data point to help me refine some of my drag calculations because I had one that I already knew the answer to. So 30-06, it's going to get you halfway there.
Okay.
About 10,000 feet.
Okay, and that's, is that again with 150 grain?
It was 155.
155, interesting. Okay. Yeah. Is that M2 ball offhand?
Yeah,
or okay,
exactly.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, interesting. But again,
it was interesting. That one, I even found something way back in the 30s. They the Army set up a test where it was just a big open area, and they sat there with a stopwatch and they fired a bunch of rounds up into the air. And then with the stopwatch clicked off when they heard it hit the ground, and they put metal plates out so that they could hear it rattle. I think it probably took them 10, 20 tries of not being able to find it before they put the metal plates out. And so yeah, all the way back into the 30s, somebody was curious about just how high you could shoot a rifle round, and it might have been maybe for shooting at fighters, but
interesting.
So, yeah.
So 30-06, your grandpas, or maybe for some of the viewers, your great grandpas or your dads or your uncles, M1 Garand, your CMP M1 Garand. We're starting to get at least into some viable categories if you have like a triplane World War I swooping in, and all that kind of stuff. But again,
or when aliens come down to abduct you, you just got to wait for them to get a little closer.
That's right.
And then,
let them come in.
Yep.
Let them come in. That's fair. Maybe tease them in a little bit, but we won't get into that.
Exactly.
So this is a family program. So maybe, I don't know. I think 95% of my viewers are like middle-aged and older men. So something my wife gives me lots of crap about. So
I know my family would be watching it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that's at least something. You're going to juice up our younger person numbers then. So I appreciate that. All right. Where do we go for the next rifle round?
So I looked at some other ones and I thought, okay, 338 Lapua and 50 BMG. Yeah, they kind of disappointed me. They've got great trajectory and they're very effective, but both of them lost velocity really pretty quickly. So
interesting.
Yeah, they were not the impressive round that I was hoping for. The 50 BMG just has so much drag to it. It's a big round. It slows down pretty quick out there. Tons of energy, but it slows down faster than I expected.
Without holding you to it, do you recall about the ranges that you remember the data pushing towards?
Oh boy, I want to say like 11,000.
Okay.
It was,
again,
it was
without
a little
holding
bit
you to
further
it,
than the 30-06, but not by a lot. It
interesting.
was.
Okay. All right. So, we'll put an asterisk next to that you're not like standing behind that math. And again, there's lots of variables and assumptions you're baking into this, and everybody gets that. So I'm sure no one on the internet will take this too seriously, right? All right. So where else did we go? Are we still in rifle land next?
We are. So I wanted to try to find something that would get close, and reading through all the what's trendy, what everybody says is the best out there. And the closest one I found, I tried the 408 Cheyenne.
Okay.
And apparently all the hype on that is pretty true. It's going to get 12,500 was what my estimate. So
based on your damage to your shoulder, I'm probably sticking with M2 ball M1
Yeah.
Garand, but you said 12,500?
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. And do you recall offhand the grains on that 408 Cheyenne?
Oh, that was a big one. I don't.
Ballpark it if you could.
Oh, that was 280, 290.
Okay.
It may
It was
have
up
been
there.
over 300. Yeah.
Got it.
It was a matter. I looked at a lot of different things, and I tried to look to see what I could find data on the coefficient of drag and popped that in there, and I can't remember which one it was, because they claim their bullets are real slippery. They claim they've got some of the best ballistic coefficients, some of the lowest coefficient of drag, and not entirely sure I believe all of that published data, because it's way better than anybody else's. But they claim that they've got rounds that are really cut through the air pretty good.
Guys, if you want us to try to coax Dan back in here to bust any online ammo myths and so forth, let us know in the comments section below, and we'll see if we can reel him back in if there's some ammo myths that you want us to look into. So, okay, so the highest rifle trajectory, or not trajectory, but height, altitude that we came across wasn't even 13,000. So we got a little over 60% ish of the way there.
Yep.
But we're not realistically close. Okay. Where did you take us next?
So, got to go bigger. And
Yep.
And so I thought, well, you can get surplus tanks. They're out there. So what if you manage to get a hold of a tank? There's one parked in front of the American Legion. I've heard the barrel's filled with concrete. But let's say you got enthusiastic and managed to clear that out and put a round in it. So we went with the 120 millimeter tank round.
So an Abrams, basically.
Yes.
Okay, got it. I haven't seen any of those outside of VFW, but someday.
Yeah, I'm sure they're
somewhere.
Sure, if you look hard enough, they're probably out there.
I'm sure. Someone in the comment section, let us know where that is. But all right.
Yeah, that's going to get you there. So, and now this one, I made a few more assumptions. As you might guess, there is a lot less ballistic data on a 120 millimeter shell, and I made more assumptions on coefficient of drag, but that'll get you 82,000 feet.
Holy smokes.
So that'll poke a hole in some pretty high altitude stuff.
82,000 feet. We did not review your findings before filming. I was thinking, it'll 22,000, 82,000.
Yeah, I was expecting it to just barely make it, but no, it'll reach out there pretty good.
So even for the higher altitude spy balloons, your 60,000, that's even catching that, right?
Correct.
Wow. Okay. So we've got that, and we've got actually some interesting information about some declassified military data that we're going to get to in a little bit. So stick around for that. But did you go into, out of curiosity, anything else like, well, what if gravity wasn't an issue, or how much you have to lead and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I thought, okay, if you could design your own bullet and really get the drag down there, maybe load it up a little bit zippier. So let's say you can get a bullet that's slippery enough that it's going to make it there. You adjust whatever it takes so that the coefficient of drag drops, and it's going to make it there. So starting off with the standard muzzle velocities, just how much you would need to lead that balloon by if you could make the bullet slippery enough to catch up there.
Okay.
And so that, and this probably isn't too surprising, those numbers start to fall closer together, because that's entirely a function of your muzzle velocity at that point. And the bigger calibers that were making it further were due to the fact they had a little bit more kinetic energy due to more mass, not due to the fact they were that much faster.
Interesting. Okay. How fast did you have the spy balloon UFO going?
20 miles an hour, because I remember reading in one of the articles that was about how fast they said one of the balloons was moving.
Got it. So we've got a balloon at 20,000 feet moving at 20 miles per hour.
Yep.
Easy to remember, 2020.
2020.
2020.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. Got it. All right. Take us through it.
So start off with the slowest round, the 22 LR, and got any guess for that? How much you got to lead?
Expressed in what unit? Feet or hope?
Okay. Yeah. Hope there is none.
There is none, yeah.
Zero. But
feet? How many feet? 20,000. Oh boy. I don't even know what would be the amount of time in the air. But yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna make up a number. Come on, theology, medieval history degree here. I'll say you've got to lead it by. Well, okay. Hang on. So we probably have. I'll say like, I don't know, 3,000 feet.
Oh, you're not giving that poor 22 enough credit.
Okay.
So just a little over 928-foot lead.
I'm only off by over 300%, right?
Yeah.
No sweat.
Which, thinking about it, depending on how good your field of view is, you might not actually be looking at what you're shooting at, to pick a 900-foot
it's
spot
outside the
out.
scope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that's why you've got the open sights.
Yeah, exactly. Use the big ring on the peep sight.
You train at the Arisaka for this moment. It's all coming together now. So about 900 feet with the 22, if gravity's not a factor, but
gravity's a factor, but assuming you can get the drag down enough to make it.
Got it. Okay.
So I'm making the assumption it left the muzzle at 1,250 foot per second, and it just ran out of steam. It got right there at 0.
Okay. Got it. So just 900 feet.
Yeah, it just got there and tapped on the balloon. Hello, and fell.
Guys, again, really short. My director says I have to do this. About 80% of you plus are not subscribers who watch our channel. If you've made it this far in the video, please again show your support for myself, for Dan, this channel. Let us grow. Click subscribe, click like, click share. Back to the show. Where are we going next?
So next 9mm, which I actually misspoke before. The 9mm is the slowest round.
Okay.
So just a little bit slower. So a little over 1,000 feet. You got to lead it with open sights on the Glock will be better for that.
Glock perfection.
Exactly.
There we go. Get those U sights.
So from there, any guesses on the 223? You've got a point of reference.
Right now, I got a point of reference. So I mean, I'm figuring, a 193.55 grain generally is expressed at about 3,200 feet per second. So I'm going to figure we'll take 300, maybe closer to 400 with deceleration.
360.
Okay. That's closer to 400.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty close.
Okay, so 360. All right. Well, hey, this is not as hopeless as maybe I thought it would be.
Yep. And for when you're practicing, they all start to cluster around because they're at similar velocities. So you can, once you get good at your 360-foot lead, it's not that big of a jump to go to your 415-foot lead for your 308.
Yeah, that's
almost spot on, right?
Almost. Right. I mean, minute of Chinese balloon is where we're at this point, right? So.
Then they kind of all start to drop in because they're similar velocities. So your 30-06, it's a 483-foot lead. Your 6.5 Creedmoor, about a 400-foot lead. Your 408 Cheyenne, 330. And then your tank round, where do you think that falls?
I don't even know what the velocity is, but you said it was about the same. So I'm figuring 3,000 feet per second. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, but the thing is as you mentioned before, it's going to have a lot more kinetic energy to it. So I think it's not going to dump its velocity at the same rate. So I'll say like 230.
So I still had it at a little over 300, but again, I was making a lot of assumptions about that.
My math's probably right.
Well, you're thinking in the right range.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
So,
all right. Good.
But yeah, that gets its range out of the kinetic energy, from the mass, not from the muzzle velocity.
Right. Interesting. Okay. All right. Anything else as far as numbers or data that you ran with pistols, rifles, and tanks?
So that was all I did for numbers, but let's see, what other interesting things did I see?
Then you had a couple juicy extras I know that we're getting to.
Yeah. So one of the things I didn't throw in there, and I know people will scream bloody murder about this. So when the bullet drops subsonic, when you drop through that barrier, there's a pressure wave there, and that will cause it to start wobbling, and that will slow it down because that creates a little more drag. I know I've got a lot of friends who shoot 22 silhouettes, and they will all shoot subsonic rounds so that they don't have their round pass through that barrier. When they're looking to put three holes touching each other, that matters. So that barrier will get the bullet to start wobbling. So that's probably why most of my calculations came out higher than the real world data, because that's
wobble starts.
Yeah, the wobble
everything
starts.
Gets worse.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So yeah, and I'm sure somebody will jump on. I didn't take the Coriolis effect into, so the Earth's spinning underneath that round, but I didn't take that into account. So, and then I did, and again, this makes my numbers a little less exact. It was a big, hairy formula. So I did numerical analysis where I just kind of chopped it into small pieces of the flight so that I can make the math easier and assume certain things were linear over it. So that's me just being a nerd.
Fair enough.
A lazy nerd at that.
A lazy nerd.
I'm a lazy nerd.
But that's okay. I mean, I think we know. Again, we're probably within what, maybe a minute of Chinese spy balloon, give or take. Okay, so
it's a big target, right? So
and people have lots of ammo.
Yeah.
So there's that.
It's a lot cheaper than a $400,000 missile to throw at it. So you can spend a lot of 22 for the cost of a missile.
Yeah, it's true. That's a lot of 22, even in a post 2020 world. That's for sure.
My sons who shoot competitively might get close to that, but
yeah,
they still fall a little shy.
Ammo expenditure.
Yeah.
Costs. Gotcha. Now you mentioned something really interesting right before we turned on the cameras here about the materials that go into, for lack of a better way of putting it, military grade balloons.
Yeah.
Walk us through it.
So one of the things, there's one thing to hit a balloon, but it's entirely another to actually shoot it down. So you can poke an awful lot of holes in a balloon before it starts to lose altitude. And I saw a video a few years ago that the military declassified. They were actually looking to use balloons to move equipment across the battlefield, particularly in areas like Afghanistan where mostly you were worried about small arms being shot at it, and they were actually floating payloads across a simulated battlefield and trying to shoot them down. And there was some note the material the balloon was made out of was something rubbery and self-healing, kind of like the targets that are real popular for people to shoot at. Mm-hmm. But the video just shows them pumping round after round into it, and it goes on for 10, 15 minutes, and eventually the balloon starts to lose a little bit of altitude, but I don't know how many thousands of rounds and holes they poked through that before it finally managed to lose altitude. It was considered a successful test. It was way more than they thought in a real-world situation anybody could ever shoot at it. Now, nothing stops you from shooting at the payload.
Sure.
And that's probably a lot more susceptible, but the balloon itself was really difficult to bring down with small arms.
Interesting. And obviously we have no idea what the UFOs, Chinese, or whoever else is using to construct their balloons. Okay, I'm going to throw a curveball at you because I thought of a question here. So what gas do we think they're probably using to float the balloon?
Ooh, that's a good question. Because helium, when you get that high up and it gets cold, helium starts to recoagulate. Turn back into a liquid. It's that probably hydrogen.
Okay.
But yeah, that gets outside of my area. But I'm gonna take a guess that it's hydrogen.
Gotcha. Well, let's do this. If you want us to go down and take a look at the gases and so forth, as far as how that might change, interplay with bullets, let us know in the comment section here. But I won't put Dan too much on the spot of guessing and then making up guesses about the guesses and everything else. Anything else here that you feel like you want to throw out there for folks?
Well, if you can come up with a round that makes it 20,000 feet that I missed, I'd sure love to hear about it. Because I looked around a lot, but my search was not exhaustive. So if anybody knows of a round that's going to make it that far or thinks they might, I'd sure love to hear about that.
And so, guys, put it in the comment section if you have got particular rounds that you just absolutely need a Dan analysis of here. And again, maybe we can coax him back in to take a look at some of those things. Anything else, Dan?
I think we covered it pretty well.
All right. Well, hey, I really appreciate you coming in. And, hopefully folks will think twice before pointing firearms in the air and pulling the trigger.
I agree. And thanks for having me.
Thanks. Hopefully you enjoyed this interview just like I did as well. It was tremendous for me not only to catch up with an old friend that I once knew and recently have now reconnected with, but also, of course, to get the answers to some of these burning questions. What would you like to see answered by Dan? Do you want to see him come back? If so, what kind of topics do you want to see him cover? I think you probably got a flavor for the fact that he's highly qualified, funny, interesting to talk to, and can probably speak to a wide variety of ballistics and Lord knows what else. Comment below what you want to see him get to in another video, and we'll see you in that one. If you haven't already done so already, please take a moment, subscribe, like, share, and guys, thanks. And if you like this interview, and if you stuck around this long, I'm hoping that you did, here's 2 other interviews that you may also find interesting.